Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Sprinklebeard, and today we are doing Evaluate the Epic on Sprinkles' favorite champion, Deimos, the Blood Hunter. Rawr! Alright, it's cringe, but it's Sprinkles, so it's adorable. Deimos is a champion that I have intentionally put off for quite a long time because he is well known in the community as being one of the top rated champions. And when I started my Evaluate the Epic series, I didn't want to evaluate champions that everybody's going to be like, yes, instant 6-star them, instantly give them awakening stones, instantly give them all your dusts, are going to be super amazing. Because that's not necessarily like playing with your favorites, or when you try to find information on your favorite champion, it's very easy to find. Come here, Sunday. No marking. It is very easy to find a top level streamer that is doing Nightmare 4. Every one of them playing with Deimos. So for me, it wasn't a super interesting champion to review. And by super interesting, what I mean is if something's like super overpowered, that's not fun for me. That's not what my channel is focused on. It's not being super endgame, doing ridiculous amounts of damage. Deimos was a champion that I was actually kind of struggling with when I was gearing him up. So this video is going to be kind of a nice little love letter to the game of the importance of gearing up your champions properly, as well as feeling like the champion wasn't overpowered. And now that I've been moving gear around and really testing things out, I'm seeing much better results with them. So let's not delay. Let's get right to it. So Deimos is a single target fighter. The big thing about Deimos is he's got a decent HP stat, a decent attack stat, very good defense. His cost is 18, which is kind of normal for a lot of our fighters. He can block up to 2 units. His attack interval is 2.6, so he's in a good place, a normal place. His rage regen is on a slightly slower side. A lot of fighters can be around 12 to 13, and then there's some weird outliers that are 14 or 15 for the rage regen, and then there's one of them that has a 0. Shout out to new champion Falsha. But with Deimos specifically, one of the things that's going to hurt the most with him is as we read through his kit, his ultimate is one of the ones where it feels like the longest to get to, and we'll explain that when we get there. So first off, in terms of his talent, basic attacks deal additional damage equal to 2% of the hero's max HP. What I really like about this is that not only does it incentivize you to build a fighter with max HP, so I like that kind of as a synergy, because as a fighter, he's going to be down in the thick of things, or he's going to be more often taking damage. He's at much higher risk than your platform champions from taking damage. What I also like about this, though, is that when you go to heal him, heals are based off of the target's max HP. So if you have champions like Deimos and Hollow out, as you have Hollow bombing heals on top of Deimos, Deimos having more HP will feel better because he'll be getting healed for more. So really cool synergy that his HP does add to his damage. So his basic attack, which is considered a continuous physical attack, game's still not super consistent on what is continuous, what is just an attack, what's a multi-attack. Hopefully in the upcoming days things will get a little bit smoother here, but deals 75% damage, scaling up to 85% damage to one enemy 2 times. Now, this matters a lot. Some players will ask me, why do I not just combine the damage to say that he deals 150% damage or 160% damage in total? The reason is that when you're striking twice, you are hitting against your opponent's armor twice. So in this case, Deimos is physical, so he's hitting their armor, not magic resistance. This means that you're hitting that armor twice. So the common example we give on this channel is if my attacker, Deimos, has 1,000 attack, and he's attacking a big beefy boy who has 500 defense, that 1,000 will get reduced by 500, meaning you're only doing 500 attack. This matters significantly when you're talking about these 2 times attacks, because that 1,000, we're saying that you're doing 100% of that damage. In this case, we're now saying that he deals 750 damage to that 500 armor 2 separate times. That means he's really only doing 250 damage. Whereas if we cranked up the number to say he's doing 160% damage off of 1,000, that would be 1,600 reduced by 500, leaving you with a total of 1,100. Well, 1,100 is a lot better than 250 2 times, which is 500. But the point is, that's why the damage numbers in this game do matter a lot. Something to be very noteworthy of is that understand that he might not hit huge numbers per attack, but he is hitting continuously. So the continuous damage part is a very good aspect to him. His passive is called Tearing. Each consecutive attack against the same target increases damage by 10%, scaling up to 15% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 6 times. The duration of the effect will not be refreshed after reaching the maximum number of stacks. Stacks will reset upon switching targets. The duration of the effect will not be refreshed after reaching the maximum number of stacks. I'm confused about, because whenever we play with him against like Dragon or in the single target arena, I don't see him like stack damage up to 6 stacks and then it reset over and over again. There is the potential it does that, but I haven't noticed that. I think that this might be a mistranslation or misunderstanding in numbers. Chat, Drell, you specifically, do you notice him restacking his passive on the same target over and over again? Or doesn't it stack up and then it just caps off there, right? Anyways, though, what's really impressive about this is that you can increase his attack damage, right? From this, you know, this quadruple threes, add 15% on there, and you're doing some very impressive numbers per attack. Finally, his ultimate, Ancestral Presence. So the cost of it is 1,100, and what makes Deimos kind of unique as a champion in this game, he's one of the few champions that starts off with 0. So he gets 0 rage on his first ultimate, which can make him feel like it takes forever to get to that first ultimate. And then with it being a cost of 1,100, eventually shrinking down to 900, this does mean that he's going to get to not only his first ult later than like everybody else, but that also means his second ult is going to feel even longer because it took you longer to get to your first ult. Anyways, increases max HP by 100% and attack and defense by 20%. Each basic attack now lands 4 consecutive strikes. This effect lasts for 20 seconds. So the fact that each basic attack now does 4 consecutive strikes, I still imagine that they're going off of your base damage here. So if you're doing 75%, it'd be 75 times 4, which would be 300. Otherwise, it would be going off of, like if you have it scaled up to the 85 times 4, which would be 3,400, right? You can cause the attack increase by 5% and the defense increase by 5%. So that means instead of during your ultimate, your attack and defense increasing by 20%, they can increase by a total of 30% off of skilling him up. The max HP that he gets can increase from 100% to 150%. And then finally, the skill cost can go down from 1,100 to 900 in total. Ultimately, his ultimate, I would say, is the hardest thing about him, or like maybe the weakest thing about him, is that it can feel like it takes forever for Deimos to get into his first ultimate and then his second ultimate, because he does not start off with any initial rage, whereas almost every other champion we've reviewed on this channel, I do believe, has some initial rage to get them to their first ultimate. That being said, some players, it might feel better for you to summon out Deimos very early to get to his ultimate faster, or to start stacking up this tearing passive as quickly as possible. With a cost of 18, that is up to you. Every scenario is a little bit different, and that's going to be something we'll cover later when we talk about where is he good at. Let's move on to Awakenings. So for his Awakening 1, during the effect of Ancestral Presence, so that's his ultimate, dealing damage restores 3% of his max HP. This is amazing for his self-sustain. This can let him feel a little bit like a pseudo tank. However, this is not Wrath levels of sustain because it's only during his ultimate. And Wrath's ultimate is only like 300, whereas Deimos's is 900. So understand, Wrath is going to feel like he can constantly sustain anything. Deimos here, this is just really nice for things like Dragon, where yes, he's constantly being peppered with damage. He now can heal back up to full very reliably, or make your healer have a little bit of an easier time. But I have not gotten Deimos to the point where he's just constantly jumping in and out of his ultimate. However, I haven't tried to make him jump in and out of his ultimate like a Laurel strategy. So there is that potential that maybe with Laurel, you could more rely on him to tank with this Awakening 1. Awakening 2, crit rate plus 5%. Feels good. I will make the same judgment I do make on a lot of my videos. I do wish that 5% crit was a little bit higher. I really do wish it was like 8%. I think it would be phenomenal. Or if all legendaries got 8% crit rate, would feel amazing. But 5%, again, it's extra stats, and then specifically it's a stat we really like on him. So no real problem here. And I would prefer crit rate over like HP at this point. So I like it. Tearing stack cap plus 1. That might not sound like it's super amazing, but instead of you getting an extra 60% base, right, you turn that into a 70% base. But when you have him fully skilled up, instead of that being a total of 75% attack boost, it actually jumps you up from 75 up to 90% attack boost, to 105. Because it'd be 15 times 7. So it'd be a total of 105. So very, very big increase if you have no skills in him and unawakened to having him fully dusted and awoken 2 to 3 times in this case. That is a big damage increase, right? That's an additional 35%. Love it. Penetration. So this lets him ignore the physical side of things by 5%. So very good. And then with that extra damage that he's stacking by himself, it makes the penetration even more useful. Finally, Awakening 5. When tearing reaches its full amount of stacks, attacks ignore 15% of the target's defense. This is the other reason I don't think that the tearing stacks refresh the way that the game says they do, because otherwise this A5 would feel a lot less useful, because like he would get up to that max cap of tearing stacks, and then just for 10 seconds he would ignore 15% of the target's defense. It would be useful, but it would just be an extra 15% onto the 5 that he already gets from here. So overall, very, very useful. Again, doing an extra 15% damage is going to feel amazing. And then earlier in the video, I talked about building him properly. Like other champions that attack multiple times or that we rely on for continuous damage, attack speed is usually one of our best friend stats. I was, for a long time, I have Kaniza. Kaniza is an attack speed legendary champion in the game. I was taking my Kaniza gear, which is just like a lot of attack speed, crit rate, crit damage, and attack percentage, and throwing that from Kaniza onto Deimos, and was like, they're pretty much gonna build the same way, and it will feel pretty good. Recently, I've started taking kind of an opposite approach, is a lot less attack speed, and been focusing much more on the attack side of things, and my Deimos is hitting for nearly double the damage. So for players working on him, we definitely want to heavily focus on on attack percentage, crit rate, and then crit damage. When we get into where Deimos is going to be most useful at, his crit damage, because of him ignoring armor so consistently throughout his kit, and the extra stats we get from the attack increase of his tearing, of his ultimate, that's why there's so many huge incentives not to actually go with attack speed, is that you get a lot higher scaling from going off of attack percentage with him and getting that base attack up as high as we can, because there's just so many synergies to increase how much attack Deimos has on him. That being said, attack speed is still going to be a wildly good stat on Deimos. By no means am I trying to tell players, do not use attack speed on him. Deimos absolutely needs attack speed. However, I will argue, tooth and nail, attack percentage, crit rate, and crit damage should be your top 3, unarguably. Just give him as much crit damage as you can and keep up with those attack percentages. Make sure that when you're giving him crit damage that he can crit, not a 10% crit. Get that crit rate up around 80% or above, so that when he does crit, it's off of this enormous attack stat that he has. That as he builds stacks up with his tearing, as you ult with him, he just hits for these truckloads of damage. Alright, so next we do move into the section of the video where we talk about where is Deimos going to be most useful at. Deimos is going to be useful everywhere that we need a fighter. So let's start off in the campaign. Anywhere where you need a ground unit blocking off a lane, Deimos is going to feel very good. I will argue Deimos feels a lot better after being heavily invested in, whereas when I was investing in him, he was always putting out damage in like the top 3 to 4 of my champions in things like Dragon, but he wasn't putting out super crazy numbers. When I played with him in the Void Rift, he felt good, but he wasn't putting out crazy good numbers. Now that I'm putting some of my better gear on him, he is putting out some crazy good numbers, especially on your giant bulky things. So things like Dragon, guys that have tons of armor that I used to rely on like Wrath's Burning for, Deimos is now shredding through them reliably in the correct gear set. So with that being said, there is the argument that use him wherever you need a fighter. If you think, hey, would I summon Wrath here? Deimos should be a quick number 2 for you, especially if you have Deimos on your account. Where Deimos doesn't necessarily feel amazing, and like he'll feel good, but just not like amazing. When it comes to your like crappy little skeletons, yes, Deimos will hold the lane, but you won't feel like he's like one-shotting them the way that Wrath will like one-shot off a wave of skeletons. Deimos will just kind of do his job and do it well. It's just different, I guess, is the best way I want to say it, is that Deimos is having to strike twice a lot of the time to kill off targets that Wrath seems to be like one-shotting constantly. But again, I will say, I do think Wrath's kit is heavily overloaded. Deimos is using those penetration stats to great advantage. So make sure that when you're using him, he's going to feel better about killing bosses, as well as penetrating through big, heavily armored things. I will say as well, I don't think Deimos makes the best tank. So yes, he can help slow things down in a lane. However, if you're using something to block a lane, I would encourage you to use your defenders and then have Deimos on the side, right? Like flanking the target, not being the be-all stop to that lane. So that being said, in the campaign, anywhere that you need a boss coverage or anywhere where you need traffic stopped for a quick second, Deimos is going to feel absolutely amazing. In the Void Rift has tons and tons of enemies that Deimos just can feast on. There are loads of levels where you have gigantic bosses, so all of his penetration and that increasing damage over time is going to make Deimos feel amazing. And by the time you're doing Void Rift stuff, you'll have a good healer to help keep Deimos up very reliably. Even though Deimos does like to stack HP percentage, he does feel a little bit on the squishier side. So make sure that you understand that just because he has a lot of HP doesn't mean he has tons of defense to back it up or tons of MR to make him feel immortal. He'll just feel good in a lot of those situations. Like, he'll feel bulky, but a little squishy. Void Rift, though, has tons of bosses for him to kill. They do have tons of big, bulky enemies where his ultimate will feel good on. Or what's nice is that if you're trying to save Deimos' ultimate for a situation, if Deimos gets down to like around half HP or below half, you know you can just ult with him and he'll heal himself back up to full, which could free up your healer to be healing other things or make you not stressed about healing a certain lane if Deimos can clear the lane up to the point to getting to his ultimate. In the arena, single target arena is going to be Deimos' best friend. I am currently using him in my sustained DPS. However, I will confess that in my sustained DPS, he is often the last champion I summon, and he's not always feeling like massive impact. He just feels good at the moment. I kind of feel like for the sustained DPS, champions like your Zilla2 or a Racha that can reach over other champions, even Abomination here, I feel like are a little bit of a better option. Again, though, if you have limited champions on your account, like let's say you have Wrath and Deimos, Deimos is going to feel like a great second summon, especially with the synergy from Wrath as well. When it would come to the airborne targets, absolutely not. There's zero reason ever to summon him in that one. And then the last one would be AoE. Again, I would argue he has no place being in the AoE arena at all. Promotion raids. The only reason we bring him to Marksman is just to leech EXP because the Marksman raid can be pretty easy. Mages, yes, you could use him as a portal guard. It's still not the best place for him. Again, with his increased penetration, he will feel better than most fighters here. However, again, since he can only sustain himself very well during his ultimate, I don't love him here. And then the cost of 18, you might as well just summon out another mage at that point. Endurance, this can be a great place for him. Again, with the ability for him to heal himself, he could out damage that poison very reliably. Decent place for him for sure. And then melee, absolutely, he feels phenomenal there. So endurance and melee, good places for him for sure. Guild Boss and Artifact Material Raid I am going to lump together in this video. Both of these are super amazing homes for Deimos. This is also where having a higher focus on your crit damage is going to feel amazing. Dragon doesn't necessarily have tons of defense, but the fact that you're penetrating half the 20% of the defense anyways makes Deimos feel very good. This also means that crit damage is going to feel a lot better. Right now, as the community understands it, attack percentage lets you get over that defense threshold very quickly. However, when the enemy doesn't have tons of defense, crit damage is better because crit damage will actually increase your damage by a percent, whereas just the more attack you have increases your base damage. So the math gets annoying, and I'm not going into it in this video. Just understand that for Dragon, if you feel like your champions have tons of attack, if you're over like 13,000 attack and you're like, why are my champions not hitting ridiculous numbers? Start shifting towards crit damage. And that was the mistake I was making on my Deimos, is I was kind of going too heavy on either attack speed or just crit damage and not focusing on having a base high enough attack stat with really good crit damage. Once I put him into much more balanced gear, not like an all or nothing gear, he started performing significantly better for me. In the Artifact Material Raid, he's not going to be the tank that you use, so he's not going to be stopping the boss from getting to the portal. However, Deimos on the flank will absolutely tear through the boss very reliably. Ideally, though, again, remember that the more Deimos attacks the same target over and over again, he does get that stacking up damage that is very beneficial. So when doing the Artifact Material Raid, make sure you're using something to either block or kill off the little bugs so that they never distract Deimos. Let Deimos do Deimos things to the boss. In Tide is a very good place for Deimos, in my opinion. It is swarms of enemies. However, the enemies can bottleneck themselves, meaning that only so many will be getting through to Deimos. And with his continuous damage, he can be shredding away some of the lower HP. Or when things get closer to the wall, that's kind of when you need more single target damage anyways. That's where you really want things to be taking as much single target damage and just popping instantly. So I think for Tide, he has a very good use there. Resource raids, again, very good place for him, especially when we're talking about the bulkier enemies. The more HP the target has, Deimos does tend to shine a little bit better here. This is a place where I do think Deimos can be your tank. So if you're like, I don't know who to put at that blocking point, you could use Wrath or Deimos. Use them both. It doesn't really matter. But this is where he will do plenty of damage to the single targets and should feel good. Gear raids. Gear raid 1, we have a lot of heavily armored enemies. And gear raid 2, we have a lot of high defense enemies. Ironically enough, this is where Deimos does shine in both of these. I think he's perfectly fine in both. I don't love him in Gear Raid 1. I would say that's kind of the weaker of the two for him. But in Gear Raid 2, the fact that you could let a charging golem run into Deimos and then Deimos could ultimate to gain back a whole bunch of HP, or you could ult right before the golem hits you and then your swipes would restore a whole bunch of your HP, can feel very good. I don't think Deimos is incredible in Gear Raid 2. I'm just saying he's going to feel very good in Gear Raids 1 and 2. In Gear Raid 1, you would obviously want him behind the wall. If you get him to the point where he's crazy powerful or your mages are doing crazy damage, you could put him in front of the wall and he'll do fine. Gear Raid 3, nope. Just don't do it. Faction trials. In the basic trial, I like using the nightmares to handle a lot of the crawlers that get towards your portal very quickly. However, again, Deimos I think feels squishy, so he's better on the flank rather than as the main tank. So you can use him here. And again, everything in here has either a higher defense or heavy armor, so he will get through it. However, at the cost of 18, I would still argue go with a mage. It's going to feel better. He is a nightmare champion, so he feels very, very good in the trial of the nightmare. Again, don't use him as your tank, depending, right? I would still go with Wrath first and level up your Wrath, give Wrath your dust and resources, but understand that Deimos does very similar things that Wrath does in terms of single target damage. So it's going to feel good to invest your resources into Deimos. And Deimos does some of the most impressive damage to Dragon. So something I haven't done in this video, so let's go take care of that real quick. We'll actually do an endurance run instead here. Gluttony, can you step out for a second?
Still hungry. Go for a run.
Deimos, do I have you in gear? I do not. Unfortunate. Let's do it anyways. Just have to summon him out early.
Keep calm and howl on.
See if they can resist my charms.
Stop, Sunday. I'm recording a video. Now is not the time I want to be hearing your growls. Ma'am. Enough. So here we can see Deimos without gear. So just the Pantheon boost that I have. He is doing enough damage to these little swarm bugs reliably that I don't have to worry about him. So that is fantastic. And then his ultimate, he calls upon the full moon. He grows huge and red and starts just tearing through anything. That's right. He starts hitting for those 4 times a second and can heal himself as well, which feels quite good. Here we can see the tearing stacks up to 6. So his first marks will be in the initial red, and then they start glowing as you get the more stacks on the target.
Apocalypse
Sorry, I need to make sure my middle's plugged up. So here we go. Here's a good, nice, big, bulky boy for Deimos. And I guess we can see if the stacks do refresh or not. He's killing things too fast for me to actually see if they will not refresh at max stacks. That's right, too. Now he's at 7 stacks, which I completely forgot about.
Back to the tavern for songs and ale.
That's right, Sadie. Yeah, Sadie. You tell him. All right, but real quick, the last note that I want to end on for Deimos specifically. I cannot stress how heavily he is rated in the guild boss. If you talk to any player, and it's one of the reasons I stayed away from reviewing him for so long, is that majority of guild boss teams, if the account has Deimos, they are probably going to be playing with Deimos on their team. It just depends on whether or not they have him. Apparently my guild does not have too many of him, but he is fantastic. And to show it off, I recently put him not in my best gear. Comet is still in my best gear on this account, but as we can see, even in Comet's best gear, Comet being in his own best gear, Deimos so handedly out-damaged him. It's almost uncomparable. So there is a small argument that, like, tomorrow, for instance, maybe I'll put Deimos in best gear and see how high he can truly reach. I don't know if I'll remember that specifically, but it's hilarious that Wrath for the longest time was top champion for me unequivocally for the longest time, and now Wrath is finally slipping down the ranks and just not being redonkulous on this account. But yes, I just wanted to show this off, that Nightmare 3, right now, my Deimos, right now he's in my Aracha's gear. Aracha has my like 3rd or 4th best gear set. I tend to use Salazar a little bit more than Aracha. I love my waifu Aracha, but to be honest, Salazar usually just kills things so fast that I don't need to bother ever summoning Aracha. Aracha tends to be like the backup behind Salazar in case Salazar doesn't kill something quickly enough. Or if Salazar gets zerged, Aracha does a fantastic job. So, yeah, that is our review for Deimos. Let me know what you guys think. How do you feel about Werewolf being a werewolf and doing werewolf things? I think that design-wise, he looks good. He's a well-designed champion. This is another time where I feel like the art direction of the game is very, very good, right? Having this werewolf, having his claws look pretty freaking good. He's a really cool cat. I think he looks good. I think he sounds good. What he says is a little on the meme side, but I like it. Overall, very, very good single target damage dealer. Very good for your account. If you were to get Deimos early, right? Like, let's say you get him before Wrath. Should you start Awakening Deimos? You could. I think that Wrath has so many benefits to him that I would kind of encourage still go with Wrath first. But could Deimos be an easy number 2 after Wrath? Yes. Right? Absolutely. I will also argue that for newer players, if you feel like, well, I have awoken Deimos up to 5-star already, I did it before Wrath, and I don't feel like he's doing tons of crazy damage yet, it's probably just a gear issue. So understand that as you start getting more attack percentage on him, more crit rate and crit damage, the pieces will start to fall into place in the proper order. I will say attack speed is going to be very useful on him, but I would say it's kind of the last offensive stat you're hoping for. So I would not sacrifice things like crit damage away to get more attack speed on him. I would focus on getting that crit rate and crit damage as high as possible. And then obviously, again, attack percentage more than anything. He feels good. It's a lot of fun to watch how fast he attacks with tons of attack speed on. But understand that getting that raw damage up first is going to be the most useful for him. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching, but of course... Oh, by the way, if you liked the video, go ahead and hit the like and or subscribe button. Helps out my channel a whole lot. If you want to come over to twitch.tv/sprinklebeard, we stream every day, Sunday through Wednesday, as long as I'm not working. And then, like on holidays like this, I am streaming today. It's Black Friday. We've had a bunch of trolls come in. They were funny. So if you want to see me handle trolls, come hang out with us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. But of course, until that next time, ta-ta.